Abid,
Yes,
can you hear me? I cannot see anyone.
I can see you. Let me come there.
Oh.
I'm trying to set it up. Is it back? Yeah, all right.
I
Okay.
can see.
Yes.
Perfect.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi. Varsha, so nice to see you.
Likewise. और आपका जन्मदिन कैसा रहा?
अच्छा, मेरा क्या जन्मदिन है हम लोग 2 जून को डॉटर का होता है, वो मनाते हैं।
अच्छा.
Hello. Ice cream. Hello.
Hello, Varsha.
Hi, how are you? Hi, Rajendra bhai. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello. Yes. Yes, sorry.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yes, sir. I can hear you, sir. Yes, I was being able to hear just now itself. If
Right. Perfect.
it is actually, I'm having to connect from my phone because my camera in the laptop is for some reason not opening up. So I decided to connect from the phone itself.
Okay. Abid, this is fine if he is able to connect with mobile. Seems to be okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Yes.
जैसे एक जैसे अगर तुम्हें जैसे
Should we start?
Think we can start as we have reached 24 people in the call, and others can join in as once we start. That is totally fine. So yeah, we can start.
Rajendra bhai.
Yes. Welcome everybody to this webinar, which I'm attending today when it is 41 degrees centigrade, and it feels like 49 degrees centigrade in Ahmedabad. So I'm sure many of us will be feeling the same effects. And still we are here today for a webinar on climate, which I think is promising. I would like to introduce the Urban Resilient Collaborative for the Informal Sector. The collaborative is there to address the white elephant in the room. The white elephant is the informal sector. yeah, we talk about the informal sector, economy, health, climate change, education, cities, but it is always left at that okay, there is an informal sector and something needs to be done. Last year, we got together, you know, uh, uh, represented by NGOs working on the ground in urban areas, by academic institutions, experts, private sector, to give a deep thought that what can be done to bring about a better quality of life for people in the informal sector when it comes to climate change. And all of us thought it was important. We have worked over a year on it. Progress has been made. And one of the things that is becoming more and more important, challenging, is that, this work cannot be done in silos, not one organization. There have to be partnerships, collaboratives. And that is what the Urban Resilient Collaborative is trying to do. I represent SATH. We are an Ahmedabad-based NGO. I'm the founder. And at present, we are the secretariat for the Resilience Collaborative. But I'm sure the collaborative will have partners from many parts of the country, and the meetings can be held elsewhere. I would now request Mr. Chetan Vaidya to take over. Mr. Chetan Vaidya is an advisor to the Urban Resilient Committee, an old friend, and he has been the director of National Institute of Urban Affairs, School of Planning and Architecture, and numerous other responsible positions. So, Chetan Bhai, I request you to take over.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajendra Bhai, for those kind words. Can you listen to me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Oh, great.
We can hear you, yeah.
Great, Hitesh. It's a proud privilege for me to introduce our moderator, Shri Hitesh Vaidya, who is at present advisor, Urban Environmental Program here. He's an urban practitioner, champion of inclusive and resilient urban development for with over 20 years of experience in urban sector. He's former director of National Institute of Urban Affairs. During his 5 years tenure at NIUA, he did a number of innovations in the urban sector. But most importantly, which is relevant to today's webinar, is he set up the City Climate Center in NIUA with support of Ministry of Urban and Housing Development, plus also designed and organized first urban climate assessment framework. This was the first time when our cities were assessed under climate framework, where in the second round, 126 cities were covered in India. He was also, prior to joining NIUA, he was country director of UN Habitat India, team leader of PMO Smart Cities, and had a long association with USAID Fire Project, which was responsible for commercial financing or urban infrastructure in India, including the first municipal bond in Ahmedabad. We are really fortunate to have such a person as moderator for the session. I will continue introduction of the speakers. I start with Dr. Barsha Poricha, who is PhD and is Technical Director of Center for Urban and Regional Excellence, that is CURE, an NGO. She's extremely committed to gender and inclusive issues in urban development. She was recently in the World Urban Forum, taking up various sessions on gender-related issues in urban development. At present, she is involved with Micro Heat Action Plan at the ward level in Agra, with focus on women and children. I then now move to Professor Melisha Smith, who's a practicing architect and urban planner based in Ahmedabad, India, and she's also a faculty at the CEPT University. Her research interest includes how habitants restructure their habitat over time. She was chair of inaugural program of Bachelor of Urban Design at CEPT University, and she also has taken studio under URC, a prototype on climate adaptation for informal settlement with participation of students and active participation of community. Our third speaker today is Roshni Nagehale, who is Executive Director of YUA, Youth for Unity and Voluntary Action based in Bombay. She works on issues of urban poverty, migration, informal economy, and gender, working on youth-led solutions for climate and urban issues under URC program. And I have a great honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Rohan Datta, who is Associate Professor at Anand University, Gandhinagar, Gujarat, and also Director of Anand School of Climate Change Research. His research interests include waste to power, low carbon technology, focus on scalable energy solutions, efficiency, and climate resilience. He's presently working on affordable water testing equipment and water treatment plant. With this introduction, Hitesh, I hand over this session to you. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Chetan Bhai and Rajendra Bhai, for introducing. I think it's a real privilege to work and have a discussion. While Rajendra Bhai said 41-degree temperature in Ahmedabad, we are right now in 45, or maybe in Delhi. And while we all talk about climate change, and we often focus rising temperatures, heat waves, floods, water. I really feel that nobody's talk about millions of these informal workers who are uh, actually experiencing this heat wave very differently. Street vendors outside, and he's still selling, and for him, it's a experiences. How does he work in a outdoor in his working environment? Uh, Somebody is like not coming, fallen sick, and uncertainty, whether should I go or should I not go, or should I leave the today's work and stay at home. And it's a threat to income, it's a threat to health, it's a threat to well-being, and very few people really talk about. Uh, we all talk about managing heat, but nobody's talking about. Very few people are talking about how do you protect the livelihoods, health, and dignity of the people who are working. And I congratulate Rajendra Bhai and Chetan Bhai that they brought different people and different practitioners together in this URC platform, where we are actually discussing and we are deliberating, we are having a dialogue on this subject, and we are not talking about 50,000 feet. We are bringing the whole discussion into 50 feet below. So we are. I always believe when we talk about climate action and climate issues, we talk about business class, but impact is felt at the street level. So it is on the 50 fact. It's on the streets when we feel the impact of it. So I don't want to talk much about it because I know that we have a great line of speakers who have actually soiled their hands working on these issues, and we don't need to give another gyan here in this thing. But I think we all know that while we all talk about climate resilient cities, uh, we need to talk about people who are keeping our cities running. Actually, if they stop, our cities will stop on this. So while uh, um, we are having a lot of solutions. Chetan Bhai has talked about the work we did in NIUA of at least saying that are we prepared for climate risks? Uh, but I particularly again feel that our climate risks are scaling much faster than our solutions. we don't have those solutions for things. And I also believe that there is no single institution, no single discipline or a sector which can address these challenges alone. And climate resilience will require collaborations across civil societies, across communities, across governments, across academia, and the private sector. Uh, so we have a great speaker, but while I know they will be talking about their issues, I particularly feel while they speak about their work which they have done and how these things can really help learn from other cities from their experiences and what need to be changed. I particularly want them to keep three things in their perspective while they are talking about it. One is, how is this climate change really reshaping the lives and livelihoods of informal workers? Second is, uh, we have a solutions, and so what are those solutions which deserves a larger adoption? And third is, while we all talk about pilots, it's always we end up and clapping our back, saying that I've done this pilot, that pilot. How do you scale, move from pilot to a city scale? I think these are three questions which I feel that we should be thinking about, because we all have knowledge, and I always feel knowledge, unless as a person and gets converted into action, the knowledge has no meaning. So how do you convert that knowledge into action and create that pathway? So I'll straight start my first question, and because we are talking about people, my first question will be to Roshni, because I know Roshni has done a lot of work through her platform called Yuva, and I also know that Roshni has been talking about that. Let's not view informal workers as the last beneficiaries of the climate action, whereas they should be looked as a co-creators or a partners in building resilient cities. So Roshni, directly to you. I think before we go, just if you can take a minute to introduce, and I think I'll not jump into this, but I'll just talk each panelist, if he can take 1 or 2 minutes of introducing themselves again, because and seeing what they're going to talk about within a minute, and then we move back and come back again to really, I'll ask a direct question to Roshni then. So before that, if Roshni and all other panelists can just take one minute to introduce themselves and what they will be speaking about, so then we have a great work to moving together. So over to you, Roshni.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hitesh ji and Chetan ji, Rajendra ji. It's really lovely to be here. And I think now when we introduce ourselves along with our names and organizations, we are now announcing how hot it is where we are. It's quite indicative, this shift. So I'm Roshni. I'm from Yuva. We are Youth for Unity and Voluntary Action, an organization based in Mumbai. We've been around for about 42 years now, and really looking at urbanization as a key driver of not just development and growth, but also inequality, and how do we really claim people's rights and entitlements within the urban space. So traditionally, our work is with the linkage between informality of work and informality of housing. So working in bastis, but also with different workers groups. And youth and women and children have been another core area of our engagement, and how do they really get included in what happens in the city, decisions, how decisions are made about the city, and so on. And I think in the last 6 or 7 years, as extreme climatic events have been increasing, we have been facing the impacts of that on those living in informal settlements and informal workers. And that really was Yuva's entry into the climate space, because people on the ground were telling us that we are not able to cope anymore with what we are facing. So how do we really support them? That was a question in front of before us. And since that time, yeah, I think about 7 years now, our engagement has really been very informality centric, collective led, and also solution driven, engaging with different partners like Hitesh ji also said. So happy to be here, really happy to be part of the collaborative, happy to be here, and looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
May I move to Barsha, please? Barsha, can you just quickly introduce yourself? Yeah.
Yeah. kind of reiterating what Roshni just said. So really grateful to be here. It's actually something which is so seminal in today's world that I hope that we can take this conversation forward. My name is Barsha. I am involved with an NGO called Center for Urban and Regional Excellence, which is based out of Delhi, is around 25 years old. And we call ourselves an unthinking organization. We've been working with issues of urban poverty and particularly slum settlements. So our work or our entry point is through slums. And as Roshni just mentioned, we've been working around climate issues in the last particularly 5-6 years post covid and the kind of urban flooding which we've been seeing. We have a presence in about 6 or 7 cities in the country right now, so we've been working around some of these issues. And as I will say, and since Hitesh you said what am I going to speak on, so my perspective will be from the slum settlement perspective, and I will share some of these insights that we have, or some of these not insights but some of these lived realities that we have experienced, and how does this and or how could this influence these heat action plans that we've been talking about. So briefly over here, we'll be speaking from that perspective. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Varsha. Can I move to Dr. Rohan Datta, please?
Yeah, sure. So happy to be part of this webinar, and also very happy to be part of this urban collaborative. Actually, we people are always inside the lab. People, we work on the things, we say a lot of things, but we never seen the reality always. So thanks to Rajendra ji. So he just hold my hand and brought me here. So the real situation that we think that we are in, actually that is quite different. So he opened my eyes actually. So so anyway, so I'm from Anand National University. So we have an Anand School for Climate Action. So it's just 4 years old, the school. And so here we have an undergraduate program, and also besides the faculty, I'm an active researcher into low carbon technologies, including carbon capture, fusion energy, and refrigeration. And in addition to that, it's because of Rajendra ji, some problems that we have identified that very easy solutions, technological interventions that can actually help the urban settlements, informal settlements, which were earlier not being applied for them. It's not because the technology were costly, but somehow that the knowledge and the demand gap was not matched. So we started working on that domain. So we developed some filters, very rudimentary materials and all, based on Ahmedabad's condition and all. So, and which actually anyone can make with little bit of training and a proper supply chain. So we are currently also working on detection of microplastics and nanoplastics in waters, drinking water through smartphones and paper strip materials, so that at low cost anyone can taste it. So I'll talk about them in detail during my talk. So thank you, Bethany.
Thank you, Dr. Rohan. Can I request Melissa Smith to really introduce herself?
Thank you, and I'm also really happy to be here. As I said earlier, I have an architecture and urban design practice based in Ahmedabad, Banduk Smith Studio, and I'm also faculty at CEPT University, and I've gotten involved with this project through teaching, and we've been working for the last 4 years with SAT to develop design pedagogies that are based on studios partnered with people living and working in informal settlements, looking specifically at how to develop climate responsive adaptations that are retrofit for both housing and work situations, but doing it through an understanding of what people in these spaces need themselves, and trying to think about how we can how we can combine the needs on the ground with some of the goals for resilience and for improving the heat conditions in these settlements. And I think with the project, we've been really interested in sort of also leveraging design pedagogy as a way to sort of expose students to the idea that these are areas worthy of design innovation because they need thinking, they need people, they need specific solutions. And then also sort of using the students as labor to sort of test and try out things that are hard to do for many practices that are working. And I think from these studios in the last 4 years, we've spun out a few pilot projects so far. The last one culminating in the retrofit roof for insulated roof with a sort of solar stack effect cooling tower that we built in December, and we're now monitoring for the heat performance. We've got the initial data back for that, which is exciting to see the improvements there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you. And I think it's a great discussion. And I particularly start feeling that after this discussion, we will definitely be able to understand the challenges the informal sector is facing and identify the paths, a pathway for making people at the center of the whole discussion. And I also feel that this pathway recognizes the informal sector and partners rather than just a beneficiary for a climate. So I'll directly go to Roshni. As we have been talking about Roshni, we all talk about plans, we all talk about technologies, we talk about infrastructure. But how do you have worked quite a bit on the through UVA with the communities. How do you see communities are understanding climate risks? How are that climate risk are really affecting lives of people and livelihoods of informal workers? And lastly, just want you to cover also how you think that the communities and the young people should not be treated as beneficiaries of climate action, but how can they become the leaders of their own neighborhoods within the informal sector and becomes a champion for climate action at the local level. So over to you, Roshni. I think you can take 7-8 minutes, explain the work you have been doing and what lessons the cities can take from your work. And end of the day, you can really think as a commissioner and say, these are the 3 key actions which I want cities to really start looking at. Over to you.
No, thank you. I think that's a very broad question, but let me attempt. I think I will recount 2 stories / solutions that might answer many of this. But before that, I want to little bit just do a macro framing because I think that will also position why UVA is doing what we're doing and so on. I think one is that, and Rajendra Joshi called it a white elephant. I think it's really about the imbalance of power of those in the informal sector bearing the brunt of climate change, but not really having any say in it. And I think the question for all of us is really how do we flip that power equation? So I think that's really the framing. And because it's a power battle, I think we can only do this collectively. It's not enough for single people to do it. And that is why the strength of unions, the strength of youth groups, the strength of Mahila Mandals, the strength of local CBOs has to really come into the fore. So that's really been UVA's motivation to really ensure that whatever work is done is the work of collectives on the ground, supported by technical experts and NGOs like us. I think the work is really collective led because only then that power can be shifted. And finally, even the solution that I will share in the next few minutes are collectively owned and managed and solutions. So these are solutions that are designed collectively. The benefits also accrue collectively. I think, there are several, there's a lot of research happening of individual solutions, thermal comfort in homes and in offices. But I think alongside that, we also need to be looking at what solutions can be designed and the benefits also accrue collectively. So these are just few framings for the next 2 sort of stories that I want to talk about. I think the first story is really that of the community climate action planning process, which we have been really looking at across 6 cities now over the last 5-6 years, and I think we've made a lot of mistakes, learnings, and so on. What really happens is we develop these, in situ sort of climate hazards maps of the city, where you can actually use GIS data to map city heat and flooding and all these risks, but then overlay that with slum data, with Basti data. So then you can actually find vulnerable hotspots, and then through this hotspot mapping, find which are the Bastis that are really most vulnerable. And then step in there and see, can we have a community climate vulnerability assessment. So detailed vulnerability assessments, which are a bit quantitative, qualitative, and led by, in our cases, sometimes youth groups, sometimes Mahila Mandals, in other cases, Mohalla Samiti. So different cities, different bastis have adopted different processes. And this is really demystifying in some ways planning processes for people in the community. So understanding where vulnerability exists at the basti level, at the micro level. And ultimately, the solutions also emerge from there. We see that many of these solutions are infrastructure solutions. I'm sure the rest of the speakers will also talk about this. These are basic development solutions, but then these are identified by the community and then worked on. Roundtables are then taken to the ward officers, which has happened. Several lakhs of rupees have been sanctioned in cities that CCAP process has moved ahead for new drainage lines, for toilets which were built under Swachh Bharat with no drainage lines are now finally getting connected. Water sources have been, identified because of the heat, so that general cooling can happen. These are different processes, and I think the success here has been that at the local level, corporations have allocated funds for this. They have allocated funds for habitat solutions that normally they wouldn't have. But because these are also seen as impacting climate, I think that has really been, where the collective effort has succeeded. Simultaneously, also, so there have been these sorts of infrastructure solutions. Also, a lot of nature-based placemaking has happened at basti level, which is difficult because land is tenuous, land is less, especially in a city like Bombay. But a lot of success when especially women and children's groups have really taken the leadership there. So, claiming a space which was maybe flood-ridden, but then really and maybe used by, at-risk elements, drug addiction, really spending time, energy to do that cleaning, to really re-green the whole area. And then just actually 2 days ago, I was in one of these sites which we had sort of reclaimed. They are growing bananas in a basti, which is right on the sea coast, which you wouldn't have thought possible at all. It's fully coastal area, but it's possible by the power of people, I think. And then ensuring that the maintenance, so in these cases, the government is not so willing to put in funds because it's not really part of their infrastructure, urban poor infrastructure work. But then CSR and other groups also come in to support these sorts of efforts. And as long as the initial effort is done by people and we can find resources, the maintenance will be happily taken up by people themselves. So we are seeing this also as a success, particularly in terms of cooling, micro cooling, but creating social cohesion within communities, which also is equally important. So this nature-based placemaking, what we call it. So these are two sort of solutions that have emerged from the community climate action planning, which is very informal settlement based and community driven. And a final story I wanted to share is of some work we've been recently doing in Nagpur, where that the construction workers, they gather at the nakas in the mornings, the TIAs, which is called there. And for many years, the unions on the ground have been asking for permanent shelter, which we have good examples of by different organizations, particularly in Rajasthan and Gujarat. MHT and others have worked on that. But somehow, because of, these TIAs are on the roadside, land is an issue, you can't really build permanent shelters. So finally, this year, the union and Yuva decided that we will ask for temporary, at least, 4 bamboos or iron pillars and some kind of a shelter on nets or some kind of tatpatris on top. And it was a huge source of joy for us that finally this actually happened. So across the 17 nakas, already 5 nakas, the process is underway. And again, this is Nagpur Municipal Corporation funded, because now this is about 62,000 to 70,000, maybe 1.5 lakh, depending on how much space they're using, what they're doing. And there's no time, but at some point I'd love to share some of the photos of how actually now women are sitting, under this, and then water is being provided, some sort of, because there are shops around. There's a lot of that sort of social networking also happening. But I think now we're trying to really push to see how these become a little more permanent. Now the rains will start soon. So can we then, use them as monsoon shelters as well? So I think these are examples of how, if collectives are strong, whether it's the workers' unions or the youth groups or the Mahila Mandals, and we have support, say, from civil society organizations, and we have architects draw some of these, design some of these areas for us, then we are really able to get even the local governments to shift, and many times even invest not just funds, but also their time. And where their reach is not enough, or it doesn't, where they can't reach, then you always have, other sources of funding as well. I did want to bring in that funding aspect, because ultimately a lot of our plans and solutions end I mean, they stop with just the plan and the solution if we can't find a way to fund it. So I just wanted to also share that that is also possible. And I mean, I think half a second to say that moving ahead in climate action planning, heat action planning, this is really what city government should be looking at. That how do we plan for informal settlements and areas of whether it's marketplaces for vendors or nakas for construction workers, how does that also form part of their regular municipal corporation planning as well as budgets and funding?
Thank you, Roshni. I think it's really heartening, the small initiative. And while you were talking, I was thinking, well, everybody enjoys the magic of good biryani, but it is the layers of that biryani which makes it magical. It's not one ingredient which makes some biryani good. It's different layers, and you did talk about different layers. And I think role of collective to really come and come up to the a seat of the discussion or a table of the discussion. I think that's a very important. You did talk about nature-based solution. You talked about placemaking, and also with the Nagpur. So then how do you link with the institutions together? It's not only initiative, but so I really enjoyed, and I think thank you for doing, because I always believe that it's the stories which takes the walk. It's not the plants, but actually the stories of people. How do they cope up with the heat? How do they manage the things? I think these stories can become a big better narrative than just talking about English, which is nobody understands. So thank you very much. I move to Barsha. Barsha, while I'm taking the example of biryani right now, I also tend to ask that some ingredients need slow cooking, some needs protection, and some needs excessive heat. And now that you are working at a very micro level, you also understand that there is a heat action plan, has a different understanding or work for the children, for the women, for the informal sector. You can't have one thing all and everybody. So I would really go forward and ask you, what has been your learning at a neighborhood level preparing these micro heat action plans, and how they can recognize these differences between different stakeholders and ensure that most vulnerable are protected from the harshest impacts. Over to you, Varsha.
So thank you so much, Hitesh, and a tall task you've set forward. But I'm grateful to Roshni for having said that macro framing, so I'll not delve into that. But one of the things that you already mentioned, and I'd like to begin with that, is when I'm glad that Roshni, that you're saying that the local governments have been so supportive of the work that you've done. And I'll just like to highlight that it's years of Yuva's work which has actually reached to that stage. So it is a lot of intensive effort, and that's something that the micro heat plans that and in the sense, for me, let me begin by saying that heat plans are scientific, are technical, but they're also social, right? So the technical part is easier to do. As Roshni mentioned, the infrastructure, we all know what needs to be done technically. But it's the social part which takes a lot of effort, and that's where Cure is just entering into this space of trying to understand what could a micro heat plan. And this came up from the issue of studying heat action plans. So a lot of cities, including Ahmedabad and Delhi and Agra, where we're doing this study, has actually started working around heat action plan. But before that, a little simple housekeeping. Is it okay to speak in English? Is there somebody who wants to? I can speak in Hindi too. Are there any? Should I do a mix?
I think hybrid will be okay.
Hybrid is okay. Okay.
Yeah.
तो हम लोग एक छोटी सी जगह आगरा में अभी काम कर रहे हैं, बट द आइडिया इज दैट ये जो हीट एक्शन प्लान, जैसे मैंने कहा, ये तकनीकी तो है, बट सोशल एस्पेक्ट्स या कम्युनिटी एंगेजमेंट के बारे में ज़्यादा है. एंड क्योर का जो काम है पिछले 20 सालों में, इट हैज़ ऑल बीन अराउंड कम्युनिटी एंगेजमेंट एंड स्लम्स. So for me, the heat action plan is nothing extra. It is the way that we actually work with the bastis, with the collectives, and as Roshni mentioned, it is only through the collectives that change happens. But what comes up very seriously, and that's what has actually caught our interest, is that the inequity is one thing, but then the gendered and the age specific layering, as you call it, the biryani preparation, Hitesh, is what needs to be now integrated into the heat action plan, which I feel at this moment is somewhere missing. The vulnerable groups have been identified, but within the vulnerable groups, the layered the layering of both women, the marginalized groups, the of course the vendors, the children, and the age specific also. There are children who get affected, but there are also elderly who get affected. And how do you actually work around that? In a slum settlement, एक बस्ती में एक घर है, उसके अंदर महिला जो रहती है, उसका जो kitchen है is the smallest place of that particular house that she has. And with that, when she's cooking over there with a roof which is not very favorable to a cooling thermal comfort, and she's cooking over there with a baby, or she's pregnant, or she's menopausal. Women, ADB का एक recent study निकला है which is very interesting, that women actually retain 15% more heat than men. So they sweat less. And this is what creates more of a psychological challenges within women in informal settlements, which none of us are talking about. We are talking about broadly, most of us are broadly talking about infrastructure and how do you actually talk about informal. But I just want to go a step later. And this is what this is a little participatory process that we've undertaken in Agra. And this is coming up as to how do pregnant women deal with heat? What is that coping mechanism that they have? And the lived realities that each of these group vulnerability is it's become like community empowerment. It's become a big group. But how do you dissect it and actually create some co-creation of bringing them on the table of all these groups who can then actually integrate themselves into the heat action plan? So final, in the sense, the takeaways that we have is that do not look at vulnerability as an overlapping aspect. Vulnerability has to be understood, and that is where I guess groups like URC and NGOs can actually come in to dissect and say that a woman living in that particular settlement is facing a gendered heat vulnerability which needs to be understood. A child who sleeps in that house and is expected to go and perform in the school next day is not able to perform. The heat has an impact on both the psychology as well as the cognitive development of a child. We are looking at malnourishment because those are the indices that we know how to measure. But I wonder if somebody is looking at the impact of heat and the impact on the cognitive development of a child between 0 to 5 years. I'm not looking at water, sanitation, and all of that. But the third part is how does it impact the elderly? We're looking at longevity, right? Even in slum settlements, you have older people, but nobody is speaking about that. So, heat action plan, what we are hoping to bring out of this, as Chetan sir said, through this URC, trying to work around this very micro heat action plan, where we are hoping to bring in some of these lived realities and see how they can be integrated within the larger heat plan of this city. So it's just not saying that today it's going to be 41 degrees, right? Today it's going to be 41 degrees, but I need to know how do we work around that 41 degrees. If I have to stay at home, if I have a little child, if I have no access to a household toilet, but I have to walk to a CTC, I know of young girls who say कि हम तो सुबह ही जाते हैं फिर शाम को जाते हैं, इतनी गर्मी भी तो हम निकल ही नहीं पाते. So their entire productivity of 50% of the people of women living in the slum settlements is completely reduced. So we're not monetizing that. The second part I want to come is budgets necessary, but we also need to quantify some of these vulnerability and impacts that is being faced by this particular population, where I count, of course, women and also challenged people, both mentally and physically. We've seen families with mentally and physically challenged people going and somehow nobody has ever heard their stories. So there are coping mechanisms which are there, but once there is somebody's hearing their stories, the solutions, as Roshni has also mentioned, comes out from there. So what we are trying to do in this particular Surjapur settlement is also create heat, heat leaders or something like that amongst youth, children, women, who can be the first level of information givers if there is a heat wave which is coming on. So how do you actually work around that? If there is a pregnant woman, what does she need to do? How do you know you've got a heat stroke? आपका बच्चा बाहर खेल कर आया फिर उल्टी कर रहा है. But what do you do over there? How do you manage that? And those are some of the things that we hope that we are, because Agra has a heat action plan, so does Delhi. But how do you get them on the table? How do these collectives actually start understanding, getting their own information, getting empowered through that information, and then having these conversations? The other thing is Surjapur is also in a very interesting neighborhood. It's in a transport nagar. So it's not only a dense settlement, but it's also in a transport hub. तो वहां से जो heat emissions hoti hai, that adds to the kind of impact that we are looking out. But where do the children play? They play outside. right? Where do they go? In the heat, outside is the. But the other thing is, women are unable, even in the night when the heat gets kind of constrained between the within that houses, it's the men who can sleep outside and get a little bit of relief, but women cannot. There are all these. So all that I want to bring on the table is that biryani is good, but we need to actually demystify and debreak the biryani. And I also want to add, I don't want to, this can go on, but all that I want to do is we need to bring in this lived realities. And I hope at URC we are able to collate all these stories together and actually take them to action. And I hope that we are able to do that in Agra. We've already got the ward councillor on board who came here for that event. So there are conversations like that. But these conversations, as Roshni said, as a single, at least for Cure as a single NGO, it's limited. But how do we come together as a collaborative, as a collective, both at the ground level and also at these conversation levels? What do we do? What are those policy action notes that we need to do? How do we influence the decision makers in a city to actually start looking at the procurement budgets? In the procurement budgets, it's very difficult to find any budgets which help them to empanel NGOs who are working like this. So how do you integrate that? Looking at climate budgeting, right? I think Kerala has come up with a fabulous climate budget, but how does a city like Agra actually start recognizing that? And they do have something, but where does the money come in? And how does that bring in that intersectoral perspective? I think I will stop here, but that's broadly what I wanted to say, that the micro heat plants need to be also layered. So thank you for the opportunity. I'll take a pause. Thank you.
Thank you, Varsha. Thank you very much. And I think you really brought up great points that while we club everything together, I think they need to be dissected, because diagnosis is okay, but dissection is also important. And after dissection, it's also good to restitch the body and just don't dissect. So I think your points of budgeting, financing, and everything, I think becomes very, very important. But I definitely like the way you said that we just don't need solutions. We need hyper local solutions. And that is the challenge we have to move forward. So I think excellent points you have made. And thank you very much for bringing this idea, because we actually tend to uh, club everything in one thing and then we forget that who is the most vulnerable. And I think this point of children, and you brought out issues of pregnant women, you brought out of challenged and disabled people. I think requires a special attention while we are talking about heat action plan. We only talk about things which are very high level, and that's what I say, that we need to come down to a 5,000 feet or 50,000 feet to a street level and come up with those actually bringing out who are the actual people who needs what type of solution it requires. So thank you very much. I move to Dr. Rohan Datta. Dr. Rohan Datta, Barsha has very nicely pointed out the risks which we need to really address. But I think the next question is, uh, what are the practical solutions community will adopt? Because when I am a community, I need to have a solution which is affordable, which is I can do it, decentralized, and which is also, as I think Roshni brought out in her stories, is also easy to maintain. It's where and that's where the technologies, low cost technologies, show the way. So my question to you is, what are those cost technologies where you are working? Because you are working in an academic environment, which how does the academia really guide the practitioner on the thing? Because right now we always believe the academia talks about theories, the practice is happening. The academia does not understand what theorists want, and theorist doesn't want what he should ask from the academia. And both of them have a both want to work, but nobody understand each other's language. So over to you. Make us understand the work you people are doing, how that practitioner can really get benefited from some of the technologies which you have been really experimenting with, so that we both talk at same language and same level. Over to you.
Thank you, Hitesh ji. Yeah, you are actually right. So there is a big gap between what academicians always talk, and then the common people, they like, wow, they are speaking, oh wow. And After that, they say, okay, we didn't understand anything. So that gap really exists. It exists till date also. But I mean, now the people from those labs are slowly coming out because now they have realized from their work itself that how the grave situation we are in. So I'm giving an example of IIT Bombay professor Vikrant Solanki. So he's a professor from energy department. I just met him 2 days back. He came in IIT Kharagpur. I'm now currently in Kharagpur. So he was in a GAR written 100 days climate something, so climate action or something he has written in Hindi. So I just went there. I mean, then we talked like half an hour to something like that. We were talking about consumption. That how consumption is actually creating the hazardous climate and environmental situations that we are now. So, and you see now the thing is that more and more people from the scientific communities, they are coming and they are learning how to talk to people who are commoner. So who needs the solution which we make in the lab, but we do not understand how to tell them. So it is our responsibility to come to them and talk to them and then slowly learn. It is not the other way around. So they have no responsibility to learn what we are doing, even if it might benefit them or something like that. So it is a responsibility for the people who are inside the lab. They should come out. They learn the language, how to communicate the technology that can change someone's life. So I mean, this is happening, and I'm very happy. I mean, so many of my friends and colleagues, they are directly coming and going and talking to people and telling them that what are the solutions that you can utilize for coping up this type of problems immediately. So yeah, so I think and that's a great thing. I mean, and now the with this change in eyes, what happens, even a few days back I went for marketing in a village. So they have a large hut, we call it, and in that village, so the temperature was around 40 degree centigrade. And I know personally that the wet bulb temperature was very high because of the humidity of more than 70%. So, but they didn't know it. And then I was just doing quick calculation. I identified that for at least 6 to 7 hours, if they stay there, and it will actually make them sick. So just I went there to one lady. She was selling some vegetables. I said in Bengali, obviously. I said, don't mind if I can tell you something that will help you. So she said, yeah, tell me, batao. So I told her that you just use a table fan, solar based or something like that, 200 to 50 rupees, and put it in front of her so that the continuously air flows to her body so that she keeps cool, because for the entire day she has to be exposed and in that particular heat stress zone. So and she doesn't know, she didn't know. So I told her, I do not know whether she has implemented it or not. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the the climate uh, change is is affecting us, uh, not considering who is rich, who is poor, who is in developed country or underdeveloped country. So it is affecting us, everyone in the same way. It's just the quickly we are able to see the changes in the informal sector. So because they are on the road the whole day for their livelihoods and life. There is no quick solution. Everyone has discussed this, and there is no quick solution. No one single-handedly can change the situation. You cannot stop climate change. Change is a natural process. It's just the rate of change we have accelerated based on our greed, consumerism, whatever you call it. It's basically greed. So I was talking with Professor Solanki 2 days back, and he was telling me one data that we are utilizing we are consuming rather the resources equivalent to 1.8 Earth. Only anything for uh, that rate consuming will exhaust everything before we you know mm, we realize. So climate change we cannot what we can do is that we can change the reduce the rate of change of climate that is happening, and the tripping point has been crossed, so we cannot undo whatever has been done already. So we all do not know how many lives has been lost under the oceans because we just don't see them. So and we are quite dependent on them. And why I'm saying all these things, I know you know everything, but it's just things are coming from inside of me by this is a very grave situation we are in. So what to do as Hiteshi was also asking. So what are the technological interventions? I'll mostly talk about that. The technological interventions that we can do. See, whatever used to be free maybe 100 years back or 200 years back, now we are paying very highly. Okay, so the water was free, the air was free, the food was free, and you know what. So I think people in Delhi, Bombay, so they all have this air purifiers by default. They cannot live without that. So earlier air was free of cost, and now water. So water to mashallah. I mean, I mean, this is the only thing that is as around 72% to 75% of our body is water, and you just understand when there will be no resource of water that we can drink. So what will happen to our body? 75% will go and will not be there. Very simple calculation. So, but what we are doing, we are taking away all the groundwater possible. Ahmedabad has gone down by around 1.5 centimeter or something recently because of the groundwater extraction. And groundwater has a limitation. So, and you cannot go on, extracting groundwater. So, what are the solutions available? So, the solutions are very easy. So, you take water from atmosphere. You extract water from atmosphere. It's a very easy thing. If you have activated charcoal in your house, you put it inside a cylinder. A cylinder means a biscuit का जो टीन का जो बॉटल होता था, एक्टिवेटेड चारकोल डालो, उसमें एक फैन लगा दो, रात को वो फैन लगा के करो, और सुबह को उसको गर्म करो, सन के नीचे रख दो, तो वहां से आपका पानी निकल जाएगा जो एटमॉस्फेरिक वाटर है. And that water you collect and it is a drinkable water. Now, the second thing, the people who have AC. So, what do you do with the water that come out of the ACs? So you just, you don't even use it for plantation. That is a pure form of water. So if you just get rid of the biological or organic contamination through UV and things like that, that's a drinkable water, purest than the water that you fetch from the ground. So yeah, we don't do that. We just throw it away. So these are the things that we need to quickly adopt. These are available already with us. So another thing, the water quality. So climate actually, due to this climate change, the number of storms and what do you call it, the drought events, all these events are growing like anything. So and these floods and all these things actually, what they do, they contaminate the local groundwater as well as the water that we face. Say for example, Ahmedabad, we drink water from the Narmada, the canal water, and treated obviously. So that also we tested recently under a URC project. So currently we are performing, and that also we have identified it has very high chlorine, so which is not good. Very high nitrate. Okay, and the groundwater is also like wonderful. So groundwater, high turbidity, high TDS, high turbidity, high nitrate, high fluoride. I mean, it's the continuous exposure of this water is a very very unhealthy thing. And what is the easy solution to it? There is a easy and locally makeable solution available. Rajasthan people early days used to use this pebbles and filter. Very easy. I mean, you just wash it and put it under the sun dry, and then you put it inside. All turbidity gone. you put another slow layer, means very small, granule size of sand below that sand filter, and keep it for say 15 days. So one biological layer automatically will be made there, and that will actually filter out most of the nitrates. And it has to be very slow, I mean most of the nitrates. And then below that there is a laterite soil that is available in West Bengal. It doesn't cost anything, I mean just to transport, and you just heat it up in at around 100 degrees centigrade in a clean and things like that, and then use that, so it will remove every fluoride that is available in that particular water. And then what you get a very good drinking water, and you don't have to think about by organic contamination and things like that. So I mean, these are the kind of some technologies that quickly can change out how you actually drink your water. So I mean, you have a AC, you take that water, you collect that water and put it that in the sand pebbles thing, and then you add the fluoride and the nitrate layers. You get a good drinking water. So you do not need to, use a water purifier that you have in your home, and you drink that water. It is the most healthiest thing you can get it.
Great.
So, and if you need, you can add some material, recharging based on the salt recharging and things like that that are already available in the market.
Thank you.
So yeah, so yeah, so I mean we are developing this filter, and we'll be actually trying to train people to make such filters, so that I mean they make it their own. So, and they create a supply chain and they apply implement. So from, it is not just piloting, it is like trying to scale it up, so that they get a business out of it, and they also get a filter that is so low cost and so much affordable that help the communities to grow and have access to good water. So yeah, so this is how we are approaching. We are trying to address this in a small scale, climate action.
Thank you, Dr. Rohan. And I think you did talk about a lot of this affordable water testing technologies, decentralized systems, and communities which identify these problems, and how do you build resilience along with the people's life. And I definitely think that one thing which you have really highlighted was on continuous testing and correction as a part of whole process. And I think your examples were excellent. I tend to the uh, again a lot of these examples which are there. How do you convert and translate the language which you are using to the people who understands on the ground, the informal sector? And I think that with the URC work, I think we can work compendium of this type of solutions and creating that language which they understand, and they understand that it has a value, and it creates, as you said, lastly, the value chain for them, so that it becomes a source of livelihood and just not academic solution for thing. I think that's a very important point you have brought it. So thank you. And now I move to my last speaker, uh, uh, Melissa. Melissa, we talked about communities, we talk about stories, we also listen to the Dr. Rohan about the technologies. Uh, and you also know that while we have a great recipe, which I take this whole thing there, the question is, how do you translate this recipe into the action on the ground? We have been seeing 140 heat action plans have been prepared on different cities. Uh, I don't know, but I don't see the impact of these heat action plans actually happening on the city, and people saying that, okay, I'm better off because my city has a heat action plan. I don't see that narrative really emerging from the whole discussion which we are having. So we don't have, we call up that heat action plan talks about, and I have been looking at a lot of heat action plans recently. They talk about cooler streets, better housing with the whatever insulated walls, We talk about shaded public spaces, healthier settlements. These are nice words, but where are they? And that's where my question to you, based on your experiences across the planning fertility as well as in the globally, how do you really bridge this gap between the policy and practice, or a planning and practice? While intentions are good, how do you convert these intentions to actual action on the ground? So I'll not take much time. So please, over to you.
Sure, thank you. I think that's a great question, and I have a foot in many different places. So it's given me perspective on some of these gaps, because I think, as the speakers before me have talked about, there are lots of ideas. We're getting better at understanding what the ground realities are. And I think part of the problem is that the mechanisms that we have for implementation are not fitting the needs of the day. And to start at the larger role or the larger scale projects that we look at in urban design, simple things like there are heat action plans, there are recommendations, but there are no mandates, there's no technical sanction for climate performance. There is one for structural performance, for electric, for cost. We actually have a mechanism for that. So it would be relatively simple to take the heat action plan and actually turn those recommendations into a requirement that a technical sanction requires, which would at least mandate that any public project that a municipality is funding goes through these criteria. Now, how to define that is a question, but I think there are ways to look at that would at least sort of make the baseline better, if that's something that we agree is an issue. And I think the other thing, when we look at the issues in the diverse spaces of informal settlements, both in housing and work, is really understanding how to get different types of projects to market. Now, Rohan talked about technical solutions and giving them for water. We look at in housing, in houses, there are lots of fixes that we can do, but a lot of them need to be privately funded. When you're talking about someone's house, you need to look at how they can improve their own house. It's not something that we necessarily can fund externally. So what actually is needed is an understanding of the materials available, the costs available, and training contractors, getting them familiar with methods that are more heat insulative. One of the things that we found is that a lot of people, for example, in the pilot that we did in December, the cost of our roof could come down to maybe 10% more than the cost of a typical roof that you would put in, and people do upgrade their roofs from time to time. So, for example, if you simply made people aware that for this 10% more, if it was better known what could be done, then anytime someone's upgrading their roof, they can actually add the insulation. So there's a lot of sort of getting this knowledge into practice that can be done. I think it's something that is starting. But then there's also a need to sort of think creatively about how the issues of heat, cooling, water can be combined with other needs that people have. And I think that's one of the things that we've been really looking at. How do you address people's livelihood concerns, people's cash flow concerns? How do you address safety issues for children or for different age groups? And how do you take those and offer solutions for people that can also work with heat? Because one of the things we keep talking about is that especially for communities that are impacted by heat, it's an issue. People understand that it's an issue, but it's an issue that's a bit beyond your personal control. So it's the same issue as air pollution, right? We don't make decisions primarily for the health of our lungs because we don't have the power to really change that, aside from drastic things like moving away, or which not everyone can do. So I think really understanding how we can combine those, like the new roof or the shade structure or the water system with something else that somebody needs, I think is a way to make it viable and to make people come up. And I think one of the things that we found out in this project that we did in December with students is that, we put in a new roof with a kind of ventilation shaft so that we could create a stack effect, which would draw the heat air out and exhaust it in the building at night and bring in cooler air from the lower levels. Everyone that saw the structure understood how it worked. They said, "Yeah, that's good. It'll perform." And we've got the initial data on it. It's about 6 degrees cooler at peak temperatures than the outside without air conditioning or fans. But what everyone was excited about was that this tower had translucent cladding on it, and so it brought light into the house, which was otherwise dark at noon, and now was sort of beautifully, diffusely lit. And in Gujarati, everyone who came in said, Hava jas bod saras che, right? So like this idea that the light and air is there in the building. And so I think that's the thing that we really need to think about in this, is that it's not just sort of a health issue or something you should do, but it's actually something that can be part of the aspiration for a better life, which is much larger than a sort of question of climate. But I think the two of that, thinking of it more holistically, becomes a way that we can also talk to people more clearly about how we can implement these things.
Thank you, Melissa. I think great point, and I really liked the whole your starting point, which is this, while we all talk about heat action plan, there is no mechanism for a heat action plan, and I particularly feel that while we are preparing a heat action plans, we have so many planning instruments in the city that these planning instruments in themselves don't talk to each other. So unfortunately, we never have in any of the planning instrument. What Roshni brought out is there is no funding chapter into it. So we all have big aspirations. We have good intentions, but we don't know where the money will come from, and unless that's solved by there is a money, we need to really think that it gets prioritized and mandated with city. And second thing which you brought out, I think is the key, and I think we all need to think, whose baby is it? Who is actually going to manage? Who is our cities, whose roles and responsibilities is to manage heat action plan? And I think the mandate is the big challenge, because I have been talking about to some of the cities, and they say, yeah, we are preparing heat action plan, but that's being done by our environmental department, which is outside the municipality, and I don't have a mandate to do that. And I think those roles and responsibilities at the local level becomes a key challenge. And I think some of the solutions which you talked about are really need to be thought about, deliberated, and see how they can be integrated in our planning thinking and design thinking of the cities. We don't have a design thinking as of now. That's sorry I say, but we have more planning thinking. So, but that need also to be think through. So thank you. And I know we have a very quick thing, but I want each panelist to give 1 minute short, go back and say that tomorrow, if you are the commissioner of a city, don't imagine Bombay. I'll not say Bombay, but even a small city, and we are looking for a cities, because I think that time has come that we come down to even a typologies of cities, second tier and third tier, and three things which you think need to be thought about by the city administration and city management quickly while they are talking about heat action and heat action planning. What are three things they should keep in mind or think about it moving forward? So I'll go directly to Roshni and then move in that same order. Please take 1 minute each and give your points.
Yeah, thanks. Great session so far. I think definitely we need to rely on planning instruments because they do have a purpose. But I think how do we improve the planning instruments so they're connected to legal obligations, funds, functionaries, and other existing urban governance mechanisms? Currently, all the climate, heat, it's all separate. It's in its own bubble. I think that dichotomy really has to break. And planning is not bad if it's done well. No, it's so I think that's one point. I think the other point is really to see that right now everybody is rushing because the caps and the haps have, everybody knows they're not successful. So now there's this big push by governments and think tanks and agencies to implement. So a lot of folks are playing the role of these sort of money brokers, just getting funds from here and sort of delivering it to your doorstep. But if we don't have plans which are operating at the city level, and just money is coming here, एक solid waste treatment plan बन गया, कहीं और एक nature based का Miyawaki बन गया. What is the connection? That is what the plan does. So I think put the money back in your plans, and so far the plans have not been great. Doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's improve planning. We have tools such as local area planning existing in our town and county planning act. We have so many folks from the academia who know how to do planning better. I think get climate action planning, heat action planning done better, and then link that directly with urban governance funds and functionaries and programs, and ensure that informality is centered in that. This cannot be devoid of informality. So I think this is really, because right now the rush is let's implement projects and just do it in a haphazard manner, and it's going to be nothing different from how our cities have been planned. So I think there's a huge risk, and the collaborative can, I think, really take a big stand. We have Hitesh ji, Chetan ji, all of us here to really, I think, play a role in that.
Varsha, over to you.
Yes, and that takes me back to my school question. अगर मैं एक दिन प्रधानमंत्री, एक दिन के लिए प्रधानमंत्री होती,
Yeah,
thank you, Hitesh, for
Nayak.
putting
नायक होता.
नायक होता, हाँ. So thank you for helping us to put on that hat. But मुझे लगता है कि अगर मैं सिटी कमिश्नर होती तो पहला ये करती कि at least map the people who are working on climate in the city, which the city commissioner is at present. I feel, I could be wrong, but within the 5,000 cities, I don't think most of them do not even understand. And when I say that, I reinforce Roshni's point of the different stakeholders, interest groups, and to recognize that the second is that related to this is climate. Heat is a public health issue. So as a city commissioner, you have to recognize its planning, and everything will come later the moment you understand it's a public health issue. And if you actually work around the heat and my hyper local heating plants, then you're actually going to save health expenditure. That's how it works. It is something like if you save on all the water, if you do rainwater harvesting, you save on the water insecurity that a city faces. So I think the second is that recognize that hyper action, it is a public health issue. And third is get civil society organizations who are actually working on connected to the ground, work around these hyper local, get into mapping. Roshni again spoke about the city mapping, which most of us are, but getting into the hyper local mapping, understanding what are those groups and trying to work. So actually, as a city commissioner, I would be the coordinator of bringing everybody together along with private sector funding, climate finance funding. That would be my role as a city commissioner. I think I'm being ambitious, but that's how I would see it. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Dr. Rohan?
Yeah, actually, it was Dr. Barsa was wonderful. I mean, I was also thinking of telling that because that is the only way to actually have some impact, at least in the area of climate action. And beside that, I will also try to remind the people who take decision, call for decision in urban areas that the climate change is not only a public health issue, as Dr. Barsa has also mentioned. It is humans' existential crisis, which is far more serious than just a public health issue. So, I mean, that urgency is still missing. That urgency is still missing. The fund is there, and the fund is getting diverted to something like, for corporate ESG, corporate, very silly things. They're spending crores of rupees instead of implementing this heat action plans and the good work Melisha and Dr. Borsa they are doing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I were in that place, I would have taken all the money and given them. Just make hundreds of such, infrastructure, and where actually people can live. And once they live properly in a human-like condition, then only they can think about the future. So heat is something that will also not allow you to even think wisely. Forget about wisely. You will be insane. So, not a good days are ahead of us if we do not take climate action and adapt to the climatic conditions. Yeah, so that's my message.
Thank you. Dr. Melissa, over to you, please.
Yes, I'll keep it quick. I would, if I had three things, I would first set up a data center to crowdsource knowledge from the city, find a better system for gathering and storing information that the city can use and make accessible. I would, as I said before, integrate climate action parameters into regular project mechanisms to sort of improve the baseline for how projects are delivered. And then the third thing is I would try to reach out to and give more power in selecting project spaces or implementation spaces to corporators, communities, and civil society groups, because I think that if we can combine a better understanding of what's going on in the city with people advocating for themselves and for their spaces, we can actually direct projects to areas that need them. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, all of you. And I think I don't need to summarize this, but it has been a great learning. And I think, from the all four of you, what you talked about, and I think that's a pathway which we all need to really start thinking is organize communities, understand vulnerabilities, deploy affordable solutions, embed them into planning, interconnectedness, and finally, which we talk about, start looking at the right-hand side of menu is finance and scale them. And I think that's where all of us have agreed upon that that is the pathway for to really look at from the climate vulnerability to climate resilience. And I think that's a great lesson from this, a takeaway from this webinar. And I thank all of the for giving me an opportunity to moderate this. It was an honor to moderate this, and listening to the practitioners who actually have worked on the ground. So thank you very much. Thank you, Rajendra Bhai, Chetan Bhai, and Abid for all the support. Over to you, Chetan Bhai and Rajendra Bhai.
Abid,
Thank you.
Abid for vote of thanks.
Yeah, I'll start with thanking Chetan Vidya and Rajendra sir for getting this episode out. And thank you, Hitesh Vidya, our moderator, for guiding this discussion. And my sincere thank you to Roshni from UA for sharing insights on worker collectives, grassroots mobilization. I would also thank Dr. Barsha for highlighting importance of inclusion and importance of the collaborative itself, and Mr. Dr. Rohan from Anant University for sharing practical ideas of affordable water testing and decentralized water treatment, and Professor Melissa Smith from SEPT University for connecting us to heat action plans with informal sector and gaps in it. The webinar recording and updates will be shared soon. Please stay tuned. There will be more episodes on this series on the Urban Collaborative Conversations. Do follow us on the LinkedIn and for the more episode. And thank you all for joining here today. With that, I will close this webinar.
No,
And
I'll
once again,
just,
thank you all.
I just want to add
Sure.
one line.
Yeah, sure.
I want to thank UNEP, UN Environment Program, for giving us this opportunity under the Cool Coalition initiative. So thank you so much, and thank you, Hitesh, for putting us in touch with them. All the best.
Thank
you
you,
so much.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.